On the menu today in this part 5 of Halloweenish, I turn one of the most recognizable Halloween figures into a girl and use my filbert brush to make some funky embroidery. When I first came up with the idea to do a Halloween decorating series, I knew I wanted to do a ghost cookie. To me, the ghost is the epitome of Halloween and therefore must be represented in any Halloween theme. But here at Kuny's Cookies, we do not do gruesome. So a cute little ghost was my desire. But as far as ghosts go, adding in the candy corn colors required some creative thinking since your typical run-of-the-mill ghost consists of just white and black. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I first needed a ghost cutter because I didn't have one already. You would think this would have been easy. It's a simple ghost. Well, somehow it wasn't. I scoured Amazon, I waded through Kaleidocuts, Semi-Sweet Designs, and the Sweet Design shop. I searched for the kind of ghost cutter that would make a soft and sweet ghost. But I did not find one. So where is it that I finally found this cute little girl? On the free forum provided by Bamboo Lab, where people post their STL files for 3D printing. So I found my perfect ghost cutter and she was free. Hey, when you're on a budget, free 99 for the perfect cutter is something to truly celebrate. As with most of my cookies, I am once again using a 1 consistency outline and flood. It does look to me like I could have done a little better job of getting all the way to the edge on the left side. However, I am very satisfied with the direction my technique is going. A month ago, I was struggling to get closer to the edge at all, and when I did, I experienced a bit of spillage, which you can see in the bonus episode of the Princess Chronicles. But today, I achieved success. No icing falling off the edge of this cookie. Now, back to my creative coloring for this ghost. I couldn't just leave it with white and black eyes. That wouldn't be consistent with my theme. So I first decided I would add my other 2 candy corn colors here at the bottom. I'm using a soft peak piping consistency for these yellow and orange waves at the bottom of her dress. And I'm using a soft peak here for her eyes as well. Using my flood icing, I add on just a little bit of white to add some dimension to the eyes. It comes across as a bit of a gleam in the eyes and is a simple addition to upgrade the look of the finished cookie. I had to add this little smile because she is a happy ghost. Though I think I would have been happier if I had used my edible ink marker to draw her mouth on instead of piping it. For her eyelashes, I did use my marker. Too bad I didn't get them to look the same. Oh well, I only had 1 shot and I took it. Maybe next time I'll try drawing the left side on with my left hand. Here is where the cameraman's nifty gimbal fails me. All I could think when I saw this was, everybody do the flop. Here's the side view. It seems to me that we have something go wrong in every series. C'est la vie, such is life. So the remainder of this cookie will be from the side, which is unfortunate because I would have loved to have had the overhead shot for when I do something to this cookie that is new to me. I mentioned in part 4 icing witch hat commentary that my original plan was to make candy corn transfers, but decided on decorating day to abandon that idea. So instead, in order to give this little girlie a bow, I needed to add it on top of the dry icing. Now, normally I do this after the icing has simply crusted, but since this is, in fact, the next day, I added it then using my soft peak piping. I was super excited when I opened up my sugar art order and got to hold my first jar of sterling pearl and rose gold, which, if I recall correctly, I only paid $1 for since it was on sale. I can't show you since my overhead shot is gone, but I first tried applying this dry, and sadly, either I didn't try hard enough, or because I was using it on white, I could barely see the color change on the cookie. So I pivoted and decided to use it wet. I know it's ideal to use a high-grain clear alcohol like Everclear or the Sugar Arts color solution to mix with the sterling pearl, but I didn't have either. So I mixed it with water. It worked out just fine, and she and her snarky friend are beautiful. This was actually the very last cookie I decorated that day. And so I was able to cut a larger hole in my piping bag so that I could get more icing out, which for this technique, I find very necessary. I learned that the hard way when I first tried this back in the white icing episode of The Princess Chronicles. I had to go over the lines multiple times to get enough icing on my surface. I didn't want to do that again, so as you can see here, a bigger hole I made. I started out using my 3/8" filbert brush to pull about half of the icing down, creating this neat texture called brush embroidery. Since doing this cookie, I have learned that I may have been doing it a little bit wrong, or at least making a couple of changes might make this process somewhat easier and produce a more defined look. One, I'm understanding that my brush is supposed to be a little bit damp. I think it helps to move the icing better. And the other is maybe I need to use a stiff-ended brush, like a little stubby square dude that will also help to pull nicer and create extra texture. And so, next time, I shall try those tips and see how it goes. Your eyes aren't deceiving you. I wasn't getting the result I wanted, so I did switch out my brush for the smaller 1/4" filbert, which I do find more satisfactory. I originally had a different plan for this cookie. As you see here, I was only going to do the brush embroidery on the edges and then flood the center in sections, all in a candy corn pattern. But since this was the very last of 28 cookies I decorated, I was ready to be done and just didn't have any more left in me to fiddle with that kind of complexity. Though I do think it would have looked really cool. Maybe I'll revisit that idea for Valentine's Day. And I'll do it first. Brush embroidery is a slow process. This cookie took me 13 full minutes from start to finish, which is why I have sped this up to double speed. If you have spent any real time watching cookie decorating videos, you may recognize this heart shape. This is, in fact, the world famous Kaleidacuts Funky Scalloped Heart. I have had my eye on this baby for months. But let me tell you, finding this guy on their website isn't super easy. If you too want this cutter, you can't just look up heart cutters on the Kaleidacuts site. For some reason, it doesn't come up. So, the way to find this exact cutter is to type into the search box, Funky Scalloped Heart. They have 5 different sizes to choose from. The one I am using is a 3.5-inch standard cutter. A word of caution. When they recommend you to hand wash only, believe them. Don't end up like me and mindlessly throw them into the dishwasher only to find out weeks later that you destroyed them. And I don't even use the heating element in my dishwasher to dry the dishes. This is just from the hot water itself. So fill your sink with a few inches of water, toss in a little dish soap, and wash them by hand. Then rinse them off and let them dry. Your future self will thank you. I decorated these cookies the day after Labor Day, which is normally very warm here in Southern California. But we were only at 82 degrees and gloomy, which was awesome and absolutely perfect for decorating Halloween cookies. This is in stark contrast to today at 95 degrees and fully stereotypically sunny. I am using a medium peak piping consistency for this brush embroidery. Well, at least I thought I was. While the orange seemed to hold up quite nicely, it appears my yellow isn't. You can see that it looks meltier. The single most difficult and frustrating thing about cookie decorating is getting the royal icing to behave. First, getting the consistency right to begin with, and then getting it to stay put. Over a number of hours, the icing has a tendency to thin out ever so slightly, which for a flood isn't necessarily much of an issue. But for this, it does make a difference. And each bag seems to have a mind of its own, just like children. And you see here that my white seems to be just fine, like the orange. Oh well, I'm probably the only one who would notice anyway. See you next time for part 6.
Next time on Kuny's Cookie Chronicles.
We are in part 6 of Halloweenish. Today, I make a wet-on-wet pumpkin and use 2 different techniques to make a mummy.